Welcome to the appendix, where we read the primary sources of the past so the present can be better understood. Today's primary source, Jefferson on the Importance of New Orleans. Letter to Robert R. Livingston, April 18th, 1802. This famous letter to the American minister to France anticipated the formal instructions of May 1st, requesting Livingston to ascertain the terms upon which France would sell New Orleans and the Floridas to the United States. At the same time, Jefferson was writing to our minister in England, Rugus King, that we would marry ourselves to the British fleet and nation, rather than see France control the Mississippi and the Gulf. Washington, April 18, 1802. The cession of Louisiana and the Floridas by Spain to France works most sorely on the United States. On this subject, the Secretary of State has written to you fully, yet I cannot forbear recurring to it personally, so deep is the impression it makes on my mind. It completely reverses all the political relations of the United States and will form a new epoch in our political course. Of all nations of any consideration, France is the one which, hitherto, has offered the fewest points on which we could have any conflict of right, and the most points of communion of interests. From these causes we have ever looked to her as our natural friend, as one with which we could never have an association of difference. Her growth, therefore, we viewed as our own, her misfortunes our own. There is on the globe one single spot, the possessor of which is our natural and habitual enemy. It is New Orleans, through which the produce of 3/8 of our territory must pass to market, and for its fertility it will ere long yield more than half of our whole produce and contain more than half of our inhabitants. France, placing herself in that door, assumes to us the attitude of defiance. Spain might have retained it quietly for years. Her pacific disposition, her feeble state, would induce her to increase our facilities there, so that her possession of the place would hardly be felt by us, and it would not perhaps be very long before some circumstance might arise which we might make the cession of it to us the price of something of more worth to her. Not so can it ever be in the hands of France. The impetuosity of her temper, the energy and restlessness of her character, placed in a point of eternal friction with us and our character, which, though quiet and loving peace and the pursuit of wealth, is high-minded, despising wealth in competition with insult or injury, enterprising and energetic as any nation on earth. These circumstances render it impossible that France and the United States can continue long friends when they meet in so irritable a position. They, as well as we, must be blind if they do not see this, and we must be very improvident if we do not begin to make arrangements on that hypothesis. The day that France takes possession of New Orleans fixes the sentence which is to restrain her forever within her low water mark. It seals the union of two nations, who, in conjunction, can maintain exclusive possession of the sea. From that moment we must marry ourselves to the British fleet and nation. We must turn all of our attention to a maritime force, for which our resources place us on the very high ground, and having formed and connected together a power which may render reinforcement of her settlement here impossible to France, make the first cannon which shall be fired in Europe the signal for the tearing up of any settlement she may have made, and for holding the two continents of America in sequestration for the common purposes of the united British and American nations. This is not a state of things we seek or desire. If France considers Louisiana, however, as indispensable for her views, she might perhaps be willing to look about for arrangements which might reconcile it to our interests. If anything could do this, it would be the ceding of us the island of New Orleans and the Floridas. This would certainly, in a great degree, remove the causes of jarring and irritation between us, and perhaps for such a length of time as might produce other means of making the measure permanently conciliatory to our interests and friendships. It would, at any rate, relieve us from the necessity of taking immediate measures for countervailing such an operation by arrangements in another quarter. But still we should consider New Orleans and the Floridas as no equivalent for the risk of a quarrel with France, produced by her vicinage. I have no doubt you have urged these considerations on every proper occasion with the government where you are. They are such as much have effect, if you can find means of producing, through reflection on them by that government. Every eye in the United States is now fixed on the affairs of Louisiana. Perhaps nothing since the Revolutionary War has produced more uneasy sensations through the body of the nation. Notwithstanding temporary bickerings have taken place with France, she has still a strong hold on the affections of our citizens generally. I have thought it not amiss, by the supplement of the letters of the Secretary of State, to write you this private one, to impress with you the importance we affix to this transaction. Thank you for joining us for our primary source today on the appendix. We will see you in the stacks.